The muzzle flash lit up her rearview mirror as gang members exchanged fire in the club parking lot. While terrified bystanders cowered behind cars, the female Uber driver methodically assessed angles of attack, counted shooters, and planned her intervention, exactly like Delta Force had trained her to do. But what happened next defied every assumption anyone had ever made about the quiet woman who drove the night shift. Because when Alexis Rivera stepped out of that Honda Civic with something hidden in her jacket, she wasn't just another civilian caught in gang crossfire. She was a ghost returning from a war that officially never happened. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from, and if you've ever suspected someone in your life might be living a double identity. Alexis Rivera was supposed to drop off her last passenger of the night. The young man sitting in the back of her Honda Civic wanted to go home after leaving the club. An ordinary night, an ordinary ride, until everything changed forever. The first gunshot shattered her windshield. Alexis's hands didn't shake, her heart rate didn't spike, because these hands had once gripped a sniper rifle in the deserts of Syria, and muscle memory never forgets. The passenger screamed in terror. "What's happening? What is this?" Alexis calmly shifted the car out of park. "Keep your head down and stay quiet," she said in a steady voice, but her eyes had already switched to combat mode. Outside the club, two rival gangs had come face to face. Los Serpientes and Black Crown members had decided to settle old scores in the middle of the street. Innocent civilians were caught in the crossfire. Alexis assessed the situation. 8 armed men, 4 on the left side, 4 on the right. Between them, 12 to 15 civilians trapped, 2 exit routes both in the line of fire. Classic urban warfare scenario. She had simulated this hundreds of times during Delta Force training. But this time was different. This time she had to protect her civilian identity. The passenger was still screaming. Alexis turned to him. "Listen very carefully. When I say go, you're going to jump out of the car and run behind that blue pickup truck. Understand?" The young man nodded, his eyes filled with terror. When the first victim fell, Alexis felt the switch inside her flip. A young girl, wrong place, wrong time, caught in the crossfire and wounded. Alexis had to decide, continue being an Uber driver or start saving lives. When she opened her car door, there was no turning back. Because underneath those ordinary civilian clothes, her body still carried scars from Delta Force operations. And tonight, those scars would start talking. When Alexis made her first move, no one was ready. Nobody expected this civilian-looking woman to move like a professional warrior. But when gang leader Carlos Mendez noticed, the night took on a completely different tone. Because Alexis Rivera wasn't just an Uber driver. For 6 years, she had served in the world's most dangerous regions, completed 23 successful operations, and carried a secret no one knew. She was a former Delta Force operative from Project Artemis, and tonight, that secret was about to be revealed. Alexis got her passenger to safety, then returned. The firefight had intensified. More civilians were in danger. A normal person would run, but Alexis wasn't normal. She reached into her car's trunk and pulled out something that looked like sports equipment, a baseball bat, standard aluminum, regulation size. But in Alexis's hands, it became something far more deadly. The first gang member didn't see her coming. Why would he? She was just a scared woman, until Alexis's bat connected with his weapon, disarming him instantly. A second strike to his shoulder dropped him, conscious but immobilized. The second target was more challenging. The man was experienced, watching his surroundings, but Alexis had 6 years of operational experience. She approached from the shadows, the aluminum bat whistling through the air. The man's gun flew from his hands before he even knew what hit him. When she took down the third man with a perfectly placed strike to his knee, gang leader Carlos finally noticed. Someone was systematically taking down his crew, and that someone appeared to be an ordinary woman with a baseball bat. Carlos grabbed his megaphone and shouted, "Who is that woman?" "Find her." Alexis was expecting this moment. She couldn't hide anymore. But she had a plan. By drawing Carlos's attention to herself, she would buy time for the other civilians to escape. Carlos finally spotted Alexis and was initially confused, a small, seemingly fragile woman holding a baseball bat. "Are you the one taking down my men?" he yelled. Alexis didn't answer. Instead, she did something Carlos never expected. Using old Delta Force hand signals, she communicated positions to the police surrounding the area. Carlos couldn't understand these signals, but experienced Detective Johnson could. "How does the police know our positions?" mumbled Carlos's Lieutenant Miguel. Carlos's eyes locked onto Alexis. There was something different about this woman. Her stance, her gaze, the way she moved. This was a soldier. "Who are you?" Carlos demanded, pointing his weapon at Alexis. Alexis spoke for the first time. "You're asking the wrong question, Carlos. The real question is, how many of your men are you prepared to lose tonight?" This response shocked Carlos. This woman knew his name. More importantly, she had the courage to challenge him. Carlos signaled his gunman, Eduardo. Eduardo aimed his weapon at Alexis. But when Alexis moved, Eduardo couldn't comprehend what happened. 1 second he was standing, the next he was on the ground, and the baseball bat was against his throat. "Impossible," Carlos whispered. "You're just a civilian woman." Alexis pressed the bat against Eduardo's windpipe just enough to make her point. 6 years Delta Force, 23 operations, 0 failures. Still think I'm just a civilian woman? Carlos's face changed. When he heard the words Delta Force, everything clicked into place. This woman wasn't an ordinary Uber driver. This was a war machine. "There are no female operatives in Delta Force," Carlos said, still unable to believe it. Alexis smiled. "Aren't there? Ever heard of Project Artemis, Carlos? Of course you haven't, because it never officially existed." Carlos's blood ran cold. Project Artemis was a legendary operation. Only the highest levels of criminal organizations knew about this project, and all the operatives in this project were women. You're from Artemis?" Carlos stammered. Alexis didn't answer. Instead, she rolled up her left sleeve. There, small but undeniable, was a tattoo, Artemis's bow and moon symbol. When Carlos's gang saw this tattoo, they stepped back. Artemis operatives had become legend. These women could neutralize the world's most dangerous criminals single-handedly. "Now, Carlos," Alexis said in a calm voice, "you have 2 choices. Either you and your men leave here now, or you're going to need a lot of ambulances tonight." Carlos hesitated. As the gang leader, he couldn't back down. But he was facing an Artemis operative. Miguel made the decision for him. Carlos's closest man suddenly attacked Alexis with a knife, but Alexis was ready. Miguel's attack lasted 2 seconds. Alexis's counterattack with the baseball bat lasted half a second. Miguel was on the ground, unconscious but alive, the bat having connected with surgical precision to pressure points that shut down his nervous system without permanent damage. Carlos was starting to get scared. Okay, we're leaving." But Alexis wasn't finished. "Carlos, one more thing. If you cause trouble in this neighborhood again, I'll find you. And next time, I won't be this polite." The remaining gang members began retreating, but Carlos had one last card to play. He reached for a concealed explosive device, planning to eliminate witnesses to this humiliation. Alexis saw the movement instantly. Her combat training kicked in. She identified the device as a fragmentation grenade with a 4-second fuse. Time slowed as her mind calculated trajectories, blast radius, and civilian positions. Alexis moved faster than anyone thought possible. The baseball bat became a projectile, striking Carlos's hand and sending the grenade flying toward an empty alley. She tackled Carlos to the ground just as the explosion lit up the night sky. When the dust settled, Carlos was underneath her, unconscious from the impact. Alexis checked his pulse, alive but out cold. Around them, civilians who had witnessed everything began to emerge from hiding. Detective Johnson arrived with backup, surveying the scene in amazement. 8 gang members incapacitated, no civilian casualties, and one very calm woman standing in the middle of it all with a dented baseball bat. "Ma'am," Johnson said, approaching carefully, "I need to understand what happened here." Alexis looked around at the unconscious gang members, the terrified but safe civilians, and the destroyed alley where the grenade had detonated. "Gang fight got out of hand. I tried to help people get to safety." Johnson examined Eduardo's unconscious form, noting the precise placement of injuries that suggested expert knowledge of human anatomy. "Ma'am, these aren't the injuries of someone who tried to help. These are the work of a professional." Before Alexis could respond, her phone rang. Unknown number, but she recognized the encrypted signal pattern immediately. "Artemis 7, she answered quietly. "Operative Rivera, this is Command. We've been monitoring local police frequencies. Are you compromised?" Alexis glanced at Detective Johnson, who was now taking photos of the scene. "Potentially. Extraction team is en route. Standard cover story protocols are in effect." Within minutes, federal agents arrived on scene. They flashed credentials, spoke quietly with Detective Johnson, and suddenly, the entire incident became classified. "This area is now under federal jurisdiction," announced Agent Martinez. "All witnesses will be debriefed and asked to sign non-disclosure agreements." Detective Johnson looked confused. "On what authority?" Agent Martinez handed him a document. "National security matter. The woman you were questioning is a federal asset operating under deep cover." As federal agents processed the scene, Alexis found herself face-to-face with Agent Martinez. "Artemis 7, your cover has been compromised. We need to discuss your next assignment." "I never asked to be reactivated," Alexis replied. "The situation has changed. We've been tracking a cell operating in the city. Tonight's gang war was a distraction for something much larger. We need someone already embedded in the civilian population." Agent Martinez handed her a file. Inside were photographs of known terrorists, shipping manifests, and surveillance reports. "They're planning something catastrophic, and based on tonight's demonstration, you're the only asset qualified to stop them." Alexis studied the files. The operation was sophisticated, well-funded, and scheduled for execution within 72 hours. "What's the target?" "The federal building downtown. During the citizenship ceremony tomorrow, 200 new Americans, their families, government officials. If they succeed, the death toll will be massive." Alexis closed the file. She had joined Delta Force to protect innocent people. Even after leaving active duty, that mission remained unchanged. "What do you need me to do?" "Continue your Uber driver cover. These terrorists use ride-sharing to move around the city. We need you to identify and track them." Over the next 48 hours, Alexis received requests from passengers who matched the terrorist profiles. Each ride became an intelligence-gathering operation. She planted tracking devices, recorded conversations, and mapped their movements. The breakthrough came during a ride to the industrial district. Her passenger, who called himself David, spoke on the phone in Arabic about final preparations and 0 hour. Alexis's linguistic training allowed her to understand every word. When David exited her car, she followed on foot. He led her to a warehouse where the terrorist cell was assembling explosive devices. Through her surveillance equipment, she counted 12 operatives and enough explosives to level several city blocks. Alexis transmitted her findings to command and received immediate orders. "Neutralize the threat. Authorization for lethal force approved." This time, she needed more than a baseball bat. From her car's hidden compartment, Alexis retrieved equipment she hadn't used in 3 years. Combat knife, flashbangs, tactical gear. She transformed from Uber driver to Delta Force operative in 60 seconds. The warehouse assault was swift and silent. Alexis moved through the building like a ghost, neutralizing sentries and disabling communications. Each step was calculated, each movement precise. She had done this dance before in compounds across 3 continents. The familiar weight of tactical gear felt like coming home after a long exile. The first sentry never saw her coming. He was focused on his phone, scrolling through social media instead of watching for threats. Alexis approached from his blind spot, using a support beam for cover. Her hand clamped over his mouth while the other applied pressure to his carotid artery. He was unconscious in seconds, lowered silently to the concrete floor. The second guard was more alert, but he was looking outward, expecting threats from the street, not from inside the building. Alexis used the shadows cast by overhead lighting to approach undetected. When she struck, it was with the precision of someone who had neutralized targets in complete darkness. Another body. Another silent takedown. She moved deeper into the warehouse, her tactical knife reflecting dull light from the sodium lamps overhead. The building's layout was typical of converted industrial spaces: high ceilings, exposed ductwork, and plenty of places to hide. But Alexis knew how to read these environments, how to use them to her advantage. Through her night vision scope, she observed the main assembly area. The terrorists were working with military precision, assembling explosive devices with components that suggested sophisticated funding and training. This wasn't some amateur operation planned in a basement. These were professionals. When she reached the main assembly area, the terrorists were in final preparations. 12 men worked at steel tables, their hands moving with practiced efficiency. Plastic explosives, detonators, timing devices, enough material to level several city blocks. The scale of destruction they were planning sent ice through her veins. The leader, a man she recognized from intelligence photos as Hassan al-Rahman, was giving final instructions to his team. Tomorrow, we send a message that will echo around the world. The Americans will learn that nowhere is safe, that their precious ceremonies can become monuments to their weakness. Al-Rahman gestured toward a detailed floor plan of the federal building. Red X marks indicated structural weak points, crowd concentration areas, and escape routes. They had done their homework. Without intervention, hundreds would die. Alexis had heard enough. She activated a flashbang and entered the room. The next few minutes were a symphony of controlled violence, years of training compressed into moments of pure execution. The flashbang's brilliant white light and deafening sound disoriented the terrorists, giving Alexis the seconds she needed to engage multiple targets. Her first strike eliminated the terrorist nearest the primary explosive cache, preventing any desperate attempt to detonate the devices. Her combat knife found its mark between his shoulder blades, severing his spinal cord. He dropped silently, permanently disabled, but alive. The second and third terrorists tried to reach for weapons, but Alexis was already moving. Her elbow strike crushed the second man's larynx, while her knee drove into the third man's solar plexus, doubling him over before a precise blow to the base of his skull rendered him unconscious. Al-Rahman shouted commands in Arabic, trying to coordinate his remaining men, but the chaos of the assault had shattered their tactical cohesion. 2 terrorists managed to draw pistols, but their shots went wide in the strobing aftermath of the flashbang. Alexis rolled behind a steel table, using it as cover while she assessed remaining threats. 8 operatives down, 4 still active. She pulled a second flashbang from her tactical vest and threw it toward the far corner where the remaining terrorists had taken cover. When the second explosion lit up the warehouse, Alexis moved like a force of nature. She vaulted over the table, her combat knife leading the way. The fourth terrorist tried to swing his AK-47 toward her, but she was inside his arc of fire before he could adjust. Her blade punctured his throat, severing his carotid artery. He would be unconscious in seconds, dead in minutes. The fifth and sixth terrorists had barricaded themselves behind crates of explosive materials, thinking their human shields would protect them. They were wrong. Alexis approached from an angle they hadn't anticipated, using the warehouse's support columns to mask her movement. When she emerged from cover, she was behind them. Her strikes were surgical, designed to incapacitate without triggering the explosive materials surrounding them. Pressure, points along the neck, precise blows to nerve clusters. Both men dropped without firing a shot. The seventh terrorist had climbed onto a mezzanine level, trying to gain a height advantage. He fired down at Alexis, his bullets sparking off concrete and steel, but elevated positions created their own vulnerabilities. Alexis spotted a chain hoist near his position and put her knife through the cable tension mechanism. The heavy steel beam the terrorist was hiding behind suddenly shifted as the hoist released. He scrambled to maintain his balance, and in that moment of distraction, Alexis's thrown knife found its mark. The blade buried itself in his shoulder, spinning him around and sending him tumbling from the mezzanine to the concrete below. When silence returned to the warehouse, 11 terrorists were neutralized and enough explosives to destroy half the downtown district were secured. Only Al-Rahman remained standing, backing toward what he thought was an exit, but was actually a dead-end storage area. Al-Rahman pressed himself against the wall, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. This single woman had dismantled his entire operation in less than 5 minutes. Years of planning, millions in funding, a dozen trained operatives, all defeated by someone he had never seen coming. "You cannot stop what we have started," he gasped, blood running from a cut on his forehead. "Others will continue the mission. Others will finish what we began." "I just did stop it," Alexis replied, securing the final explosive device with practiced efficiency. "And if there are others, we'll find them too." She zip-tied Al-Rahman's hands behind his back and checked his pockets for hidden weapons or communication devices. Standard counterterrorism protocol: assume nothing, verify everything, leave no operational loose ends. Federal agents swarmed the warehouse as Alexis completed her mission. Agent Martinez found her cataloging the seized weapons, photographing serial numbers, and documenting the sophisticated nature of the explosive devices. "Outstanding work, Artemis 7. The city owes you a debt it will never know about." Alexis removed her tactical gear and returned to her civilian clothes. The transformation was almost supernatural, from deadly operative back to ordinary Uber driver in minutes. "Will my Uber cover remain intact?" As far as the world knows, federal agents acting on an anonymous tip prevented a terrorist attack. Your name appears nowhere in the official reports. The media will report a successful federal operation. Nothing more. Agent Martinez paused, studying Alexis with professional admiration. "You neutralized 12 trained operatives single-handedly. That's not standard field work. That's artistry." "It's what I was trained to do," Alexis replied simply. "Some skills you never lose." 6 months later, Alexis continued driving for the ride-sharing company. Her passenger ratings remained perfect, her routes covered the entire city, and nobody suspected that the polite woman behind the wheel had single-handedly prevented a massacre that would have dominated headlines around the world. Her Honda Civic looked ordinary from the outside, but subtle modifications told a different story. Bullet-resistant windows, reinforced door panels, a modified engine capable of pursuit speeds. The baseball bat remained in her trunk alongside equipment that would never appear on any inventory list. Sometimes, late at night, she would drive past the federal building where families had celebrated new citizenship without ever knowing how close they had come to tragedy. The ceremony had proceeded as planned, with flag-waving children and tearful relatives watching loved ones become American citizens. None of them knew that 12 terrorists had been planning to turn their moment of joy into a scene of unimaginable horror. Her phone buzzed with a new ride request: airport pickup, destination unknown. As she started the engine, Alexis smiled. In a world full of threats, someone had to stand guard. Someone had to be ready when ordinary people needed protection from extraordinary evil. And sometimes, that guardian drives an ordinary car, carries a simple baseball bat, and answers to a call sign that officially doesn't exist. The night was young, and the city needed protection. Artemis 7 was ready.